Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. This is your host, Mariana speaking, and thank you so much for joining us another week on this very special episode. Thank you so much for coming back to the podcast, you guys. I'm really excited about this episode. I just want to apologize in advance, however, because you might hear that my voice sounds a little bit raspy. So just issuing an apology out there in advance. I was one of the less fortunate individuals to catch COVID this time around. I went the whole pandemic up until now without it, I guess. And I told myself that if I went, the remainder couple years of this pandemic without having caught it, I would get myself something big. But alas, I have now lost that bet with myself. It wasn't my fault. I caught it indirectly from a sister's friend who caught it from her workplace, unfortunately. So again, just issuing out there my apologies if my voice sounds a little bit raspy, but also to remind you guys to keep staying safe, keep wearing your masks, get vaccinated if you haven't already. This pandemic is still very much alive. And let me just say that my symptoms and the severity of my symptoms in comparison to the individuals I know who are not vaccinated and have been suffering their symptoms, the difference in severity has been significant between us. So I'm one of the few lucky ones that only had one bad day of body aches. And ever since then, I've been totally fine energy-wise. Like I said, just a bit of a cough and a raspy throat. But I know there have been individuals that have not been so lucky. So please get vaccinated. Please wear your mask. Please sanitize. Please keep following guidelines so we can get back to normal as soon as possible. And isolate if you have COVID-19. Keep isolating. Before we get into the episode, I just want to respectfully acknowledge for a moment here that I am recording this episode from the land of the Musqueam, Stalo, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Coquitlam First Nations communities who continue to have a relationship with this land to this day. And I feel very lucky that I get to be here, that I get to reside here, and to keep coming back to this home whenever I'm able to from school and to be with my family here. And I look forward to continuing to shed light on this topic as we continue to be uninvited settlers to this wonderful land. So, as you guys might have noticed, things look a little bit different since the last time some of you might have been here. So I wanted to dedicate this shorter episode to talking about what these changes are, why I've chosen to go through with them, and kind of what you guys can expect now from me and from the podcast. So as you guys can see, hopefully maybe when you clicked on this episode, is that the podcast is no longer a Perspective by MJ. It is now called the Commitment to Growth Podcast, a name that I'm super happy with, by the way. I ruminated on a ton of names, and this is the one that just felt the most right to me for multiple reasons, which I will get into. But the reason why I wanted to shift away from a Perspective by MJ and into the Commitment to Growth podcast is because when I started a Perspective by MJ earlier in March of this year, of last year in 2021, I believe now, I really thought that this was just going to be kind of a side hobby. I was really just kind of like dipping my feet in the water for the first time, really trying to get a feel for it, see how I liked it, because podcasting is something that I've always been a fan of in terms of listening to people, give podcasts, talk on podcasts, bring guests onto podcasts. I've mentioned a few of my favorites on here multiple times before. And starting one had always been kind of on my bucket list of items of things to do. But when I first started, obviously, I had no idea. I was just talking to my laptop. Then I got a microphone and felt a little bit more savvy. And then I started talking to people and really kind of creating this community, establishing my follower base. And I loved it so much, and some of the responses I got were so touching and so motivating. And the more I got into it, the more I realized that this is something that aligns with who I am so much and aligns so much with how I want to give back to the community, to this earth at a larger scale, really. And so the more I got into it, the more I got obsessed with it, and it just made sense to go all in and to make this something big, because it is something that I want to make big eventually. I want to work really hard to create a big community from this. I want to work hard to spread the legacy of the things that I want to be talking about on here to more people. I want to help more people through the things that I talk about on here. So I have spent the last month and a large part of this winter break that I'm now out of as you guys are hearing this, but I spent a large part of my winter break just really going in and defining my purpose, defining the purpose of the podcast, what I want to say, how I want to say it to you guys, the kind of support that I want to provide to listeners outside of the podcast. So after speaking to a lot of lovely and very talented individuals in my life who have more knowledge on this, who have more knowledge around business and marketing, and receiving a lot of help from their end, and just doing a lot of personal work to kind of dig out, like I said, that hidden purpose, that hidden why, I landed on this name, and now I have created kind of a path as to how I want to revolutionize the podcast and this community for the people listening. So that is kind of the background as to why I decided to change it and make it into what it is now. So for the following, let me tell you what you can now expect from me and from the podcast, because super excited, a lot of new things coming you guys' way. So like I mentioned before, it is now called the Commitment to Growth Podcast, no longer a Perspective by MJ. There won't be much of a change in terms of what you'll be hearing on the podcast from when it was a Perspective by MJ. So I'll still be talking about a broad range of personal development topics, but that will be what the podcast comprises of. So I believe that health, true health, is established in the pillars of body, spirit, and mind. So the podcast topics are going to be geared towards developing those areas of our lives to achieve ultimate health, confidence, better relationship with ourselves and the people around us. That will comprise the episodes on this podcast. I will still be having guests on because I loved that part so much, and I got so many good response from the guests that we had on when it was a Perspective by MJ. And again, those guests will also be talking about topics and their stories that are geared towards bettering one of the areas of mind, body, and spirit to achieve, like I said, that kind of ultimate holistic health. So I'm super excited about that. That, like I said, you won't expect too many new things in terms of the topics that we talk on here, except that they'll be more geared towards personal development from those three pillars. But also, I wanted the episodes to be more proactive in the sense that you guys can come here and expect that there are actionable items that you can take away from each episode to then apply to your own life afterwards. So each episode will have some kind of here's a why and here's a how, or here's a topic and here are hows to address it. And some episodes will have those actionable steps. So very often I will say at the beginning of the episode, have a pen and a notebook with you, or you can always have it on you if you'd like, or just put it into your notes app on your phone. But I have also gone ahead and actually prepared for certain episodes that are to come still some PDFs, some free PDFs that you guys can get access to after you've listened to those certain episodes, so that you can then take the information that you learned in the episode and either journal on it or meditate on it or whatever the specific activity is, so that you don't have to go back to the episode and, sit there with your pen and paper and write down everything I said and just skip through to the steps. So for certain episodes, one which will be dropping next Tuesday, so keep your eyes out for that. I'm really excited about that one. You will have some action items that you can download for free to apply all the knowledge that you learned in the episode that you just listened to. So I'm super excited about that. Again, just providing you guys more support as you go through this self-development journey. And I'm very excited to be offering that to you guys. And the other thing is that, again, like before, I know I said this last time and it became a rarity that episodes came out, but I've been trying to batch produce a couple for you guys now before school starts and goes back into full swing. So you can expect new episodes from the podcast every Tuesday at 5 a.m. PST or 8 a.m. ET, and that is 7 a.m. Central Time. So new episodes every Tuesday from the podcast so that you can have them at the beginning of your work week and you can take them into your work week or your school week and listen to them and ruminate on them over the weekend until the next episode drops. So new episodes every Tuesday. And the last thing that you can expect, and I am absolutely ecstatic about this one. Like, this is my little baby. This is the personal project that I've been wanting to do for a really long time. And now I can finally talk about it to the world, is that the podcast is also going to be offering a newsletter, which will be called the Commitment to Growth newsletter. Obviously, very fitting, I found. So if you are a regular subscriber to the newsletter, which, by the way, it is also free for you guys to have access to and have access to right in your inbox, is that you will receive 3 items from me every single week. So the 3 components in the newsletter are 1 quote, 1 perspective shifter, and 1 source of growth, all of which I have detailed clearly in the first email that you get if you subscribe to the newsletter. So go to the link in my bio on Instagram. It's at Commitment to Growth Podcast. You can click the link in my bio, sign up for the newsletter, and you will get an email that details just what those 3 things are and what to expect from each of them. But just to give a very brief kind of synopsis of what the purpose of the newsletter is on here, is that this newsletter is supposed to be even more additional support for you guys outside of the podcast, so that you can receive more sources of personal growth and development, healing, meditation, health and fitness, pretty much anything and everything that we talk about on the podcast. I provide resources about on the newsletter so that you can have them in your inbox. You can have more support from me as you're going through this journey, because it can be lonely. It can be difficult. It can be hard to figure out where to find these resources. So that newsletter is meant to be additional support and an additional source of inspiration and encouragement as you guys go through your week and you're looking for ways to dedicate time to yourself by scheduling in time for self-development. And that newsletter, the goal of that newsletter is to be another encourager. I don't even think that's a word, but another source of encouragement, and an additional resource that will help you guys as you go through this process. So I'm super excited about it. Reminder, just go to the link in my bio on Instagram at Commitment to Growth Podcast, click on the link, sign up for the newsletter, and the first newsletter is dropping on Thursday, January 13th. And I think that's it for that. I guess the only other thing is that obviously our Facebook handle has changed. It's now at Commitment to Growth Podcast on Facebook, and the email that you can reach me at if you want to suggest a topic for the podcast or if you want to be a guest on the podcast, it's now commitment to growth pod at gmail.com. So not podcast, just pod at gmail.com. Just keep it short and sweet. Not that it's that much shorter anyway, but you get the gist of it. And I think that's it for all that's new. So I'm ecstatic. I'm so happy that I can share this with you guys now. It's been a very busy last couple months, just kind of like really figuring out my why and why I want to be here, why I want to keep doing this, what I want to offer to you guys that has value for you to use and to keep you wanting to come back every single week to keep doing this together. So if you are someone who is currently on the self-development journey, or you're somebody that's starting out and you don't know where to start, or you're feeling unmotivated because you've been disappointed in the past, or you have perceived that you have failed in the past when you've tried to start, and you're just wanting additional support, additional resources as you go through this process, I've created this podcast for you to give you that value, to give you that extra hand, and to give you that accountability by giving you those action steps to implement so that you can take them away from the podcast, apply them to your daily life, and get just one step closer to achieving that very desired version of yourself that you want to become. So I'm super excited to be here, you guys. Thank you so much for letting me share this with you and for following along. And if you're still here, thank you for sticking around, and invite your friends because it's about to be very exciting. So I'm excited to roll this out to you guys in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, next couple of months. 22 is going to be a big year. And I'm excited for everything that we are about to embark on together, all the conversations we're going to have, everything that I get to share with you guys, everything I get to learn from you guys. And without further ado, let's dive into what 22 has in store for us.